If you look at that middleware layer
Yeah.
from the IT space,
Yeah.
when we started doing software-defined technologies, it was a new way of thinking. And one of the fundamental principles behind that was, how do you design a platform that does go across different functions
Yep.
and in many cases decouples the underlying hardware from the above application layer?
Green Hills Software is a worldwide leader in embedded safety and security, with hundreds of millions of vehicles running software created with Green Hills Automotive Solutions. Green Hills safety certified real-time environments, embedded virtualization, and advanced development tools lower development costs while reducing time to SOP. For the latest in software-defined vehicle solutions, visit www.ghs.com. Hi, my name is Junko Yoshida. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Ojo-Yoshida Report. I am here with a special guest, Jeffrey Chou, CEO of Sonatus.
Welcome.
Yeah, and this is so special because I'm a big fan of your company's video blog, videocast. It's called Garage. As you can see, we are actually in the middle of a garage. And I said to myself, how cool is that I can have one of the episodes of software-defined vehicle actually inside the garage. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm very happy that you're here with us.
Yeah, okay. So Sonatus may not be exactly the household name for people who are just interested in vehicles. I think engineers know it, especially those who are involved in software-defined vehicles should know it. But I would like to start from the top. So what company is it, Sonatus? Yeah. What do you do? Let's start from there.
Yes. We are a software company that provides what we call building blocks for OEMs and tier ones who are our customers and our partners to build software-defined vehicles. Now, a lot of people wonder what exactly is a software-defined vehicle and what is a building block for software-defined vehicles. So it might help a little bit if we frame the discussion around what our thought is around a software-defined vehicle first.
Yes.
And then I can tell you how we fit.
Okay, that's good.
Does that sound good?
Yeah. We usually start, to you, what exactly software-defined vehicle? We're going to start from there, yeah.
Sure, that's perfect.
Yeah.
For any software-defined entity, I think it means many things. For this thing, in this case, a vehicle, it means the vehicle needs to be dynamic. It needs to be ever-changing.
Yeah.
It needs to be flexible and adaptable, right? If you contrast that with a hardware-defined vehicle of the past,
Yeah.
a hardware-defined vehicle is you manufacture it once and it remains the same.
Right.
So when a customer purchases a vehicle, it is the same on day 1 versus day 100.
Yeah.
And it never changes.
Yeah.
And if you want a new feature or if you want your vehicle to change, it doesn't. You have to wait till the next model year.
Yeah, you just get old. I
It
mean,
just
this
gets
gets
older.
old. Yeah, right.
Right? You take it in the shop to repair.
Right.
Right? But a software-defined vehicle is more adaptable. It changes over the entire life cycle of the vehicle, right? From conception and R&D, through manufacturing, through post-sales, through service, throughout the entire vehicle life cycle, things are changing in the car.
Right.
You can be adding features. You can be modifying features. You can be improving efficiency. You can be improving reliability. You can be proactively preventing problems.
Right.
Right? You can be collecting data and understanding what is going on in the environment or how the driver is driving, for example. So it's a very dynamic entity.
Okay, before you go further, let me ask you a fundamental question. I have a question that how can you add features when your hardware is the same?
I think we have that proven in a cell phone or a laptop.
Oh, okay. So
Your hardware doesn't change,
Right.
but your software can change.
But that means you're asking car companies to put a lot of room to grow in hardware itself, no?
To some degree, yes, but I think the way software technology has evolved is what you need to do is lay the foundation, the correct foundation for software, so that you can utilize the same hardware and gain extra benefits like new features, for example.
Okay.
So you can buy a phone or a laptop, and that phone or laptop isn't necessarily obsoleted,
Right.
within 3, 5, 7 years, depending on, what kind of
but
model you
people
buy.
do change.
People do change because they are consumer
Right.
devices and they tend to break down easier.
Yeah.
But in an auto, there's still opportunity to improve a user's experience without having to upgrade hardware.
All right.
But what is important is that the proper software foundation is there. And that is fundamentally what Sonatus does. And so when you look at, going back to your original question,
Yes,
what exactly do we do?
Yeah.
In the software world, there are many, quote unquote, layers of the cake,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
At the very lower layer, you have things like the operating system. And at the very highest layer, you have things like the application.
Right.
So what Sonatus does is we build the middle layers.
Okay.
We build software that's above the operating system but below the application level.
Right.
And we build software that is both in the vehicle as well as in the cloud.
I see. So let me ask you this. This is such a fundamental question. I'm afraid to ask, but I usually don't. I'm such an amateur. But let me ask you: how is that the middle thing you talked about? How is it different from what people often say middleware? How is it different?
Well, I think traditionally in automotive, middleware is still relatively tied closely to the hardware.
Oh.
So if you look at, again, a hardware-defined vehicle of the past, you had components, and each component had a specific function, like your brakes or your transmission or your drivetrain, right?
Right.
And so an OEM and a tier one would traditionally collaborate on building a specific component.
Yep.
And then the OEM would integrate several components together to build your car. That particular component has hardware and software that are very coupled and tightly aligned.
Okay.
And what is happening in the software-defined vehicle world is that middleware is being decoupled from the particular silo.
Okay.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And if you architect the software properly,
Yeah.
then the middleware will be across multiple of these silos.
Okay.
So you then begin to disaggregate the applications from the actual hardware.
Oh.
And that's when you start gaining flexibility and adaptability across the entire vehicle.
But where does Sonatus come in then in that picture?
So we sit in that middleware. So our software ultimately helps to disaggregate the silo hardware
Gotcha.
to allow the application a little more flexibility in the environment and the hardware that they use. So conceptually, that's where we sit in the vehicle. And then there's a cloud component.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Because I think one of the other big properties of a software-defined vehicle is that it has to be connected.
Right.
Connected to the cloud, for example. So if you really want to architect your software properly for a software-defined vehicle, cloud is a big component. So you have to have both sides.
Yeah.
And Sonatus provides those, what we call building blocks, for OEMs and tier ones to integrate with their software technologies and their applications to build their version and realize their vision of a software-defined vehicle.
So, we were talking before. I want to go back to this because you're talking about that connectivity to the cloud, but also you're talking about, tying things together in the middleware, right, inside the vehicle. So you have both components.
That's right.
But before this conversation took place, you're talking about data center. And for a layman like myself, what does a data center have anything to do with software-defined vehicles? So can you rewind the clock and have that conversation a little here?
Sure, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of our engineering team and our technology came from data center. And a lot of people question, well, a car is not a data center.
Right.
In fact, a lot of OEMs and tier ones, the engineers that work there kind of despise their IT department, right?
Yeah, right.
Right? I mean, oh my God, I found this ticket and they still haven't fixed it or whatever, right? So in many ways, it's not a pretty term for a lot of people. But if you look at the history of software-defined technology, it did come out of the data center in the early 2000s.
So the word itself, software-defined, was coined by the people who are developing data centers?
That's correct. And actually from academia even before that. So it came out of papers from MIT and initiatives from Stanford to define what we call a software-defined network. That was the first incarnation of a software-defined technology. Oh. And even though that term was coined, I would say it's more of a philosophy, and it's more of a methodology and a value proposition than just words.
So why did data center want software defined? I mean, why did they go that way?
So I think there's a very interesting parallel here. Before software-defined technologies in the data center, in many ways, things were more static, and it was difficult to manage. It was difficult to scale. It was difficult to coordinate. And there was less flexibility. And in the early 2000s, you had, it was a period of great explosion in data center technologies and scale and abilities, and cloud computing just began. So you needed a layer of software to help manage that, coordinate that, provide an environment where applications could be developed. You needed more resiliency. There was a whole host of reasons why you needed a new layer that defined, what this called software-defined network was. And that happened all in the early 2000s and mid-2000s. In fact, I think the first software-defined network deployment was in 2006, 2007 timeframe in the industry, not counting academia.
Right.
And then it reached beyond networking to storage, to cloud.
Right, that's right, yes.
And then it went all over the place. So we see a very much a parallel of that in automotive. And it's going through the same transformation because of the same technology and economic forces. It's still there.
Yeah.
You need to do things faster, quicker, cheaper, more efficiently. It has to be more flexible, more manageable. Those kind of forces are there in every industry.
So let me ask you this. You were previously with Cisco, was that it? Or where were you before?
One of my previous companies I was with was Cisco.
Okay.
But many of them are from other areas in the data center as well. So Cisco was definitely part of my past.
When did you switch? When did you actually see the light? Whatever I'm doing is going to be very helpful for the automotive industry. Did you actually have that aha moment?
There was an aha moment because I think if you look at history, you will find that every industry goes through the same transformation. When I was working in the IT space, I was part and I witnessed the transformation of the financial industry, the retail industry, the media industry. They all went through this quote unquote digital transformation.
Right.
And it's time for auto. And the signs were very, very clear. Okay, the signs were very, very clear, and it became more and more apparent that automotive was going through this as well. And one of the things that is definitely a clear sign of this was that software was becoming more important. Over-the-air updates, OTA, was becoming more important. That was the very beginning.
Yeah.
But if you think about OTA, it's basically downloading a new package of software.
Right.
And rebooting your car.
Right.
And we did that in the late 90s in the IT industry, right? You downloaded your new version of your operating system or your applications.
Yeah.
And then you rebooted your computer.
Okay.
But that was the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then the real software-defined technologies came about 5 to 10 years later.
Within the IT.
Within the IT space.
Okay.
So once OTA,
Yeah.
started happening in cars, it was the first sign, wait a minute, something is beginning to reach that tipping point.
Right.
And now there's an opportunity to apply all the technologies that we did in the data center to vehicles. So that was one clear sign.
Yeah.
Right? The second one was connectivity.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right? Once cars started being connected to the cloud, that was the second kind of hardware infrastructure foundation layer that basically was also another trigger.
Right.
Because that universal connectivity began in the late 90s as well.
That's true, yeah.
In data center, right? Mid to late 90s. Right. So the patterns are all there.
Yeah.
And once you begin to kind of recognize the patterns, it's like, okay, even though people don't want to admit it, the car is kind of becoming a data center on wheels.
Yeah. But, let me ask you this. I mean, I can see how data center was able to embrace the idea of software-defined vehicle. It's more natural in the IT world, but for the automotive industry, I think there are certain hurdles. I mean, or you don't see the hurdles. I mean, what's your take on this?
Oh, I think there are a lot of hurdles.
Yeah.
And maybe far too many to go into.
Okay.
But certainly from a technology perspective, one of the hurdles is that the technology and the resources available in the car is very different than what's in the data center.
It's more limited.
It's a lot more limited.
Yeah.
And there are a lot more restrictions. There's safety requirements, there are environmental requirements.
Right.
Yeah, there's all sorts of requirements that are there in a vehicle.
Yeah.
There's also, it has to be in motion.
Yeah. Oh, right. You have to count. Yeah. Data center sits there.
Data center just sits there. So universal connectivity for cars in motion, vehicles, is not ubiquitous and it's not reliable.
Right.
So you can't count on ever-present, ever-reliable connectivity when you're driving in the mountains. Right. And it's also true for, actually, we've heard of software-defined vessels now, boats. Right. And you don't have connectivity in the middle of the ocean either. Right.
Yeah.
So there are many technology differences between the two industries.
Right.
Is number one.
Yeah.
Number two, there's far more what I call legacy technologies, because you have a very heterogeneous environment. There are cars of many makes and models, of many years. You have cars that are more volume, vehicles that have less hardware resources. And you have luxury cars or vans or 18-wheelers that might have more hardware resources. So how does this all fit together? So the heterogeneity of a fleet is very different than a data center. That's a little more homogeneous.
Yeah, that's true.
And then finally, I think you have cultural challenges. The IT industry is a relatively new industry compared to automotive. Automotive has been around for 100 or more years.
Yeah.
So you have companies that have been very, very successful in what they've done. And they themselves have transformed how we live our lives. And they have a certain way of doing things that have been more, hardware-centric, manufacturer-centric.
Right.
And software is a different concept.
Right.
I'm not saying software is harder
Yeah.
or hardware is harder. It's just different.
Yeah.
So the mindset is slightly different.
Yeah.
And so I think, for the automobile industry to go through this transformation, there are a number of hurdles.
I see.
From a technology perspective as well as a cultural perspective that they have to go through.
Yeah.
So I think a transformation like this in this industry is going to take time.
Yeah.
It will have a lot of challenges, but I think the driving force behind it is the same, and it's inevitable.
So again, getting back to the automotive industry, what are the main drivers? Why do they want to do software-defined vehicle? From what you hear from your clients.
Yeah, I think again, it's the same as all of the other industries. I think the industry itself and the vehicle itself has to be more flexible, more adaptable, because the new generation of buyers is expecting more from their vehicles. It's not
okay.
just about getting from point A to point B.
Right.
It's about, can the vehicle adapt to what I want
Wow.
quicker?
Yeah.
Right? The expectation, because now if you look at all the devices that we buy in our lives,
Yeah.
they're all changing.
Yeah.
They're all
true.
adapting.
That's true. Yeah.
Right? And so the car should do the same. Right? And a lot of the way you interact with a car in the past has been very static, very fixed, right?
Okay.
And so the new generation is looking at, my car needs to be able to do XYZ on day 2, but it didn't do that on day 1, right?
Yeah.
I buy this thing, this platform, if you will,
Yeah.
and I want it to evolve with me.
Yeah.
And other cars are doing it.
Yeah.
This other brand, they just got a new feature last night.
I see.
What about my car? Yeah. Right? Or I'm trying to plug in my phone and I need a better digital experience in the car. How's that going to work? Yeah. Right? So I think that, consumers
pull is definitely
there.
Okay.
But it's more than consumer pull.
Yeah.
I think, within the ecosystem of automotive, if you look at the OEM itself and their suppliers and other downstream members like insurance companies or dealer networks or any of those players, they all need to adapt as well. So how do they fix your car quicker? How do they anticipate that there's a problem before it becomes a problem?
Right.
To improve your experience,
Yeah.
or to improve their supply chain management, or to help them with efficiencies in their factory,
right,
or their testing, right? Everything is always driving towards more efficiency, cost optimization, flexibility. So, and this applies throughout the entire life cycle of, the manufacturing, the vehicle, the OEM, the tier one. How do they support one another? How do they interact with one another? Things are always happening quicker.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the fundamental driving forces.
Right.
If you look at a typical, I'll give you another example, profit margin of an OEM.
Yes.
It's, typically within the single digit percentages, or maybe even lower in the lower percentages, right? Depending on who you're talking to. And so there's always pressure, pricing pressure on how do you get that up.
Yeah.
And so OEMs are always looking to decrease their operational costs,
right,
but also looking for new sources of revenue.
Right.
So typically when you sell a car, your revenue is day one. You sell the car and maybe you get some service revenue.
Right.
But where else is it going to come from?
Yeah.
Software services is a perfect example
Yeah.
of where you could get more revenue.
Right. Right.
And I think that's another driving force.
So, you just gave us a whole litany of reasons why that both consumers and people who are in the automotive ecosystem want to actually drive towards software defined, right?
That's right.
But in reality, when you open the car, that is not so easy said than done, is it?
It's very hard. It's not easy at all.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to require a lot of collaboration from a lot of players across the industry. Not one player, not one company can do this. So advancing the ball forward in this software-defined evolution is going to take time and collaboration and cooperation. I think the most difficult part is culturally and organizationally.
Wow.
I think every OEM and every tier one has brilliant engineers. So from a technology standpoint, I think a lot of things are well understood.
Mm-hmm.
I think the challenge that a lot of OEMs and tier ones will have is how do they integrate the software-defined mentality and building software and integrating software into their existing organizations, their existing procurement models, their existing legal structure, and across multiple organizations within their company. I think that's the challenge for a lot of traditional OEMs and tier ones. And it's interesting when you look at all the different upstart OEMs, let's just call them that, they have a certain advantage because they built the vehicle from the ground up. and they don't have a lot of the traditional organizations and cultures set in stone with a lot of those relationships. And so they have an advantage there. But I always like to talk about how traditional OEMs and their tier ones, they should win this race. It's all within them because they've solved all the hard problems around inventory, supply chain, manufacturing, distribution channels, right? Those are hard problems that takes decades
of experience.
Right. And operational efficiencies, right, that build over time. So really for them, in terms of winning the software-defined race, it's all within their own organizations. I think that's where the challenge is because the technical expertise and the technical smarts are there.
Right.
And it's a matter of all of these companies having the right mindset to collaborate and to overcome some of their previous organizational differences and cultures. But from a technical perspective, I'm very confident that we can all together break through and overcome these challenges.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, a lot of people talked about the siloed structures within corporations. It's part of the difficulties, right? But when you talk about technology, I think there is a place that if you look at software layers inside the vehicle, there are certain spaces where you guys in that other companies, whether I'm OEM, tier ones, hadn't really thought about. Tell me more about that special place that you found yourself, your software just in there.
If you look at that middleware layer from the IT space, when we started doing software-defined technologies, it was a new way of thinking. And one of the fundamental principles behind that was, how do you design a platform that does go across different functions and in many cases decouples the underlying hardware from the above application layer?
Right.
So in some ways there's this abstraction layer too.
Yeah.
But that abstraction layer, I think many people understand that concept.
Yeah.
There's a lot of technology that goes behind that. It's not trivial. You have whole companies set up to do that in the IT space, right? And I can name a few: virtualization, orchestration, right? Network, storage, application services, big data, cloud infrastructure. There are many companies in the IT space that are focused on a specific portion. That's why we believe that there's room here for many companies in this ecosystem. Why we find it difficult to believe that one OEM or one tier one or one software company can do it all. There's just too much. So virtualization is a perfect example.
Yes.
How do you virtualize the underlying hardware? And it's not just CPU. It's also network. It's also connectivity. It's also security, right? It's also storage. It's all of the what we call hardware resources to provide an environment for an application to run in a secure manner, in an isolated manner, virtually isolated. Right, in a high efficiency, high reliable manner, right? It's safety, because that's a big part of automotive, and not have to care about all those issues and have that middleware take care of all of that, right? So you want the application to focus on what the application does best,
right?
And you want that middleware to focus on all that other stuff. We call that infrastructure services.
I see.
And that infrastructure service layer is non-trivial. And I think there's a lot of learnings that we had in the IT space that a company like us can bring to the automotive space and help fill in the gaps for our customers and our partners.
So when you look at software-defined vehicle in total, right? And just like we're doing a software-defined vehicle podcast series, that means a lot of interest in the market. But when you look at your clients, yourself, a lot of players in the ecosystem, where is the industry? with software-defined vehicle today?
I think we're in the very, very early stage. I think things are just beginning. Everybody's eyes are just beginning to open and understanding what it means, and I don't think we're there yet. So understanding what it means is still evolving. Understanding how you go through this journey is just beginning, and implementation is just beginning. So I think we're at the very early stages of this transformation, and it's very exciting. And actually, what is most exciting is for every industry, you don't know what the end disruption is going to be. You don't. Who could have predicted?
Yes.
Let's talk about media.
Yeah.
Who could have predicted social media?
Right.
15 years ago,
Right.
when we started going through this transformation in the IT space? Nobody could predict it.
Yeah.
Right? It was only during the course of this transformation that now you flipped media on its head.
Right.
And you have a new model for revenue,
Sure.
for reaching media consumers,
Yeah.
for generating media content.
Yeah.
Same with automotive. We don't know exactly what this is going to unlock 10, 15, 20 years from now. We're very early in this transformation. But what has to happen is the underlying foundation layers have to be built. And that's going to come now.
Yeah.
And we're early there. And then what is it going to unlock 20 years from now? It's going to be very exciting to see.
It's exciting on one hand, but on the other hand, wow, we're not even at the base camp yet.
We're not even, we've identified there is
It's
a base camp. We kind of know where it could be.
Yeah.
And we're bringing along equipment that we've designed before from another mountain.
Right.
And we think we can put something together and get ready to scale the mountain. So that's where we are.
Great. Well, it's very nice talking to you. I really learned a lot. Thank you.
It was great talking to you as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Green Hills Software is a worldwide leader in embedded safety and security with hundreds of millions of vehicles running software created with Green Hills Automotive Solutions. Green Hills safety certified real-time environments, embedded virtualization, and advanced development tools lower development costs while reducing time to SOP. For the latest in software-defined vehicle solutions, visit www.ghs.com.